Hello and welcome to Prepspot. In this video, we are going to know about a recent development in international trade, focusing on the European Union's latest demand for India to eliminate tariffs on car imports. The background of this issue stems from long-pending free trade agreement negotiations between India and the EU, which have been in the works for several years. As of April 2025, reports have indicated that the EU is pushing for a complete elimination of tariffs on imported vehicles to make European-made cars, representing some of the world's most renowned brands like Volkswagen, Mercedes-Benz, BMW, and even newcomers such as Tesla, more competitive in the Indian market. This proposal, however, is causing a stir on the Indian side, as current import duties on vehicles can exceed 100%, positioning India's automotive sector as one of the most protected in the world. The rationale behind the EU's proposal is based on a broader strategy to liberalize trade and ultimately boost the bilateral trade value, which both parties aim to reach in the vicinity of $500 billion by 2030. European policymakers see this move as a critical step in not only increasing their market penetration in India, a rapidly evolving and extensive consumer market, but also in aligning their broader economic policies with other global trade initiatives. Under pressure from similar demands by the United States earlier this year, the EU's stance underscores its intent to reduce market barriers that have historically hindered its manufacturers from gaining a stronger foothold in India. In response to this pressure, India has reportedly considered a compromise wherein tariffs would be reduced substantially, but not entirely eliminated. Insiders suggest that the new tariff could be brought down to around 10% from the current rate exceeding 100%. This idea, though, is not without controversy. Domestic carmakers in India, including prominent names such as Tata Motors and Mahindra, have voiced strong opposition to such a significant tariff cut, especially when it comes to electric vehicles, EVs. They argue that an immediate and radical reduction in tariffs could expose them to overwhelming competition from well-established European brands, which in turn might jeopardize investments that have been made in the burgeoning EV sector. Local industry leaders are particularly concerned about the potential long-term effects on jobs, local manufacturing capacities, and the overall competitive edge of the Indian automotive industry. For petrol cars, some industry advocates have proposed a phased approach where tariffs are first reduced to 70% for a limited range of vehicles, before eventually tapering down to 30% over time. Conversely, when it comes to EVs, these manufacturers have been even more cautious, insisting that there should be no tariff cuts until at least 2029, after which limited reductions could be considered. This disparity underscores the complex balance the government is trying to strike between protecting domestic investments and meeting international trade commitments. It is also important to appreciate why this topic is making such significant waves in international news. The negotiations, which have been ongoing for years, are reaching a pivotal moment wherein the decision made by India could redefine not only its domestic automotive policies but also its trade relations with key global partners. The EU's insistence on zero tariffs is viewed by many as a strategic move to ensure that consumers in India benefit from lower vehicle prices and greater variety, as imported European models could potentially flood a market that has been dominated by high tariffs. For the average consumer, this could translate into more affordable access to premium vehicles that previously were subject to prohibitive import duties. However, this potential benefit comes with a trade-off. A more open market might erode the protective policies that have, until now, safeguarded one of India's most important industrial sectors. Looking at the historical context, India's automotive market has grown to produce around 4 million vehicles annually, a figure that underscores the sector's importance to the national economy. With such high production numbers, India has been able to build a robust domestic industry with significant investments flowing into both traditional internal combustion engine vehicles and the emerging electric vehicle segment. However, the stringent tariff regime, which in some cases exceeds 100% for imported vehicles, has been justified by the government as a necessary measure to shield local manufacturers from fierce international competition. This protective stance, while successful in fostering local growth, now faces new challenges as global economic pressures demand a more open and competitive marketplace. The EU's demand can be seen as a part of a wider trend in economic diplomacy, where influential trading blocs are leveraging their collective bargaining power to secure market access for their industries. As discussions continue, we see that these negotiations are deeply intertwined with larger geopolitical and economic strategies. On one side, European companies are looking at these tariff reductions as an opportunity to capture a share of a massive market, particularly as countries around the world shift towards greener technologies and sustainable transportation solutions. On the other side, Indian policymakers are grappling with the need to modernize the economic framework while also safeguarding the interests of domestic manufacturers who have become the backbone of the nation's industrial prowess. To delve a bit deeper into the technical details, it is crucial to understand how current tariff structures operate. Presently, India imposes exceptionally high duties on imported vehicles, a move designed to discourage reliance on foreign manufacturers and nurture local industry. The proposed change, to bring this down to 10%, represents a dramatic shift in policy. For petrol cars, the domestic industry's proposal is even more nuanced, an immediate reduction to 70% for select models, with subsequent gradual reductions to around 30% over a set timeframe. When considering electric vehicles, the strategy is notably different, as local producers argue that tariff cuts should be delayed until 2029. This delayed approach is intended to give indigenous EV manufacturers the breathing room required to develop and scale up their production capacities without being overwhelmed by the influx of cheaper imported options. The balancing act between achieving more competitive consumer prices and maintaining vigorous domestic industry competitiveness is at the heart of this negotiation. On a macroeconomic level, this situation highlights the challenges that many developing countries face when confronted with globalization and free trade agreements. As India seeks to increase trade with the EU and other major economic powerhouses, it finds itself caught between two forces: the drive for economic modernization and the need to protect strategic domestic industries. Many industry experts suggest that while tariff reductions could lead to lower prices for consumers and increased market efficiency, they might also precipitate short-term setbacks for local manufacturers who have long benefited from tariff-induced monopolies. This is particularly salient in the case of electric vehicles, a sector that, despite its global growth, is still in its early stages within India and where the stakes for local investment and technological innovation are incredibly high. Furthermore, from a policy standpoint, the implications of this debate extend well beyond the automotive sector. The outcome of these tariff negotiations could set a precedent for future trade deals, influencing how India negotiates with other global partners and shapes its domestic economic policies. As these discussions progress, the government, along with key industry stakeholders, will have to weigh the benefits of increased competition and consumer choice against the potential risks of undermining local enterprises that have been instrumental in building the country's industrial capacity. The broader economic narrative here is one of transformation. India is at a crossroads where it must decide whether to continue with its traditional protectionist policies or to embrace a more liberal trade regime that aligns with the evolving dynamics of the global market. Another layer of complexity is added by the fact that this is not an isolated incident but a part of a series of demands emerging from international partners. For instance, similar pressures have been exerted by the United States, which earlier this year demanded the elimination of tariffs on car imports as part of its own trade negotiations with India. Although the geopolitical backdrop differs from that of the EU, the common thread is the increasing global push towards opening up markets. This convergence of external demands reflects a broader trend where major economies are re-examining the efficacy of high tariff barriers in a world that is progressively favoring free and unobstructed trade. In this context, the EU's demand for zero tariffs on car imports from India can be seen as emblematic of a larger strategy aimed at harmonizing trade policies across different regions to ensure a more integrated global market. From the perspective of competitive exam preparation and policy analysis, there are several key points that are essential to understand about this issue. First, the factual data regarding current tariffs, which hover above 100% for many vehicle types, serves as a critical baseline against which any proposed changes must be measured. Second, the potential phased reduction proposed by India to bring tariffs down to 10% overall for imported vehicles illustrates the negotiators' attempt to find a middle ground that could satisfy the demands of powerful trading partners while mitigating the impact on domestic industry. Third, the differing approaches for petrol vehicles versus electric vehicles highlight the strategic priorities of the domestic industry, which is taking a cautious approach toward the latter. Such distinctions are not merely technical details, they are indicative of a broader strategic calculus, where protecting investment in new and emerging sectors is just as important as fostering overall market competition. It is also instructive to consider the implications of this debate for global trade relations and domestic industry health. On the consumer side, lower tariffs could mean more affordable vehicles, a broader range of choices, and potentially faster access to the latest technologies coming from abroad. For European manufacturers, the benefits are clear. They would gain a much larger market share in a country that is rapidly modernizing its transportation infrastructure and consumer market. However, for India's own automotive giants, the risks are significant. Domestic firms have invested heavily in innovation and manufacturing capacity over decades, and a sudden influx of cheaper imported vehicles could disrupt market stability, lead to job losses, and diminish the returns on these investments. This tension between potential consumer benefits and industrial disruption is at the core of the current policy debate. Moreover, the negotiations serve as an insightful case study in the dynamics of economic diplomacy. The ability of a nation to balance its domestic priorities against the imperatives of global trade frameworks is a challenge faced by many emerging economies. As trade negotiators navigate this complex terrain, they must simultaneously manage the expectations of local industries, the demands of international partners, and the long-term goals of national economic growth. The EU's demand for zero tariffs is not merely a technical request, it is a strategic initiative designed to realign market access in favor of regions with more advanced manufacturing capabilities. Meanwhile, India's consideration of a phased reduction reflects an attempt to manage the transition in a way that protects local jobs and maintains industrial competitiveness while still participating in the global marketplace. Another critical dimension of this issue is the impact on the electric vehicle sector. While traditional gasoline-powered vehicles have dominated the market for many years, the shift toward electric vehicles represents a transformative change in the automotive industry worldwide. India's domestic manufacturers have been ramping up their investments in EV technology, recognizing that the global future of transportation is increasingly electric. However, they contend that if tariffs are reduced too quickly for EV imports, it might rapidly erode the nascent market share that local companies have been striving to build. This is particularly significant when considering the broader implications for environmental policy and sustainable development. The gradual reduction approach for EV tariffs that domestic industry is advocating for is aimed at ensuring that investments in indigenous technology and infrastructure are not undermined by an abrupt policy shift. The government is faced with the dual challenge of wanting to accelerate the adoption of cleaner technologies while simultaneously safeguarding the economic interests of local manufacturers. As we examine this complex negotiation further, it is evident that the stakes extend beyond the immediate impact on car import prices and the automotive sector. The potential reconfiguration of tariff structures is poised to affect the overall trade balance between India and its key partners. A reduced tariff regime could enhance India's market integration with the global economy, opening up opportunities for increased foreign direct investment and technology transfer. However, it also raises important questions regarding economic sovereignty, how much a nation should compromise its traditional protective measures in pursuit of global market opportunities. Policy analysts are closely watching this debate because the decisions made in the coming months could very well determine the future trajectory of India's industrial policy for decades to come. In summary, today's discussion has provided a comprehensive overview of the multifaceted debate surrounding the EU's demand for zero tariffs on car imports from India. We have delved into the historical context of India's protective trade policies, examined the economic rationale behind the EU's proposal, and considered the varied perspectives of domestic manufacturers and international trade partners. The key takeaways include an understanding of how current tariffs, which exceed 100% for many vehicles, form the basis of India's long-standing strategy to protect its burgeoning automotive sector, and how any attempt to reduce these tariffs, to even as low as 10%, carries significant implications for market competition and industrial investments, particularly in the rapidly evolving field of electric vehicles. This ongoing debate is emblematic of the larger global shift towards greater economic interdependence and the challenges that arise when domestic policies meet international trade expectations. As India navigates these waters, its decisions will be scrutinized not only for their immediate economic impact but also for how they signal the country's broader strategic vision. For those preparing for competitive exams or looking to better understand international trade dynamics, the current situation offers a treasure trove of insights. It illustrates the tension between free trade ideals and protectionist measures, the role of tariffs in shaping market dynamics, and the intricate balancing act that governments must perform in an increasingly interconnected global economy. With timelines indicating that these negotiations could reach a pivotal juncture by the end of 2025, and with domestic policies possibly remaining stringent on EV tariff cuts until 2029, we are witnessing a significant moment in the evolution of India's trade policy. As we continue monitoring these developments, it will be essential to keep an eye on how both domestic and international stakeholders react to the proposed changes. The European automotive industry, buoyed by the promise of greater market access, is poised to capitalize on lower tariffs, potentially resulting in more competitive pricing and innovation in vehicle design. Meanwhile, Indian manufacturers remain vigilant, wary of the risks posed by a sudden influx of imported cars that could destabilize local production and investment. The broader implications of this debate are not limited to the automotive sector, rather, they touch upon themes of global competition, regional economic integration, and the future of sustainable transportation. In today's interconnected world, decisions made at the negotiating table in Brussels or New Delhi can have ripple effects that extend far beyond national borders, influencing everything from consumer prices to technological innovation and environmental policy. In conclusion, as you listen to this analysis, I encourage you to think critically about the dual nature of trade policies and the profound impact they have on both macroeconomic stability and local industrial growth. The EU's call for zero tariffs on car imports from India is a clear signal of the evolving international trade landscape, one that is characterized by an increasing push for market liberalization amid ongoing concerns about national economic resilience. Whether you are a student of economics, a professional in the automotive industry, or simply an informed global citizen, understanding these debates is key to grasping the complexities of modern economic diplomacy. Answer this question in comments. The correct answer will be given heart and pinned. Lastly, we just want to let you know that we are a newly emerging online platform for competitive exams. Creating educational explainer videos like these requires a lot of effort, money, and time. If you like these videos and want us to excel and create videos in all categories of competitive exams, then you can consider supporting us with a one-time donation through the Ko-fi platform and also by becoming a member through Patreon. This will help us create more such informative educational videos in the competitive exams space. So, one last time, subscribe and share this channel with all your friends who are preparing for competitive exams. And also, follow us on social media platforms. The links are given in the About section of the channel and also in the video description. So, see you in the next video.